This is a 2,700 word review, potentially the longest I've ever cooked up. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Go crazy, go crazy, go crazy, go crazy, go crazy, go crazy,
Hello, I'm Wakely, and today I'd like to talk to you about One Piece Film Red. But before we get into it, I'd like to go over the structure of this review. In terms of the order, I'll be starting with a brief spoiler-free review for those who haven't seen the movie or aren't even caught up to the manga. This is basically going to serve as like a short answer review, so I'll talk about the good, the bad, give my final verdict, and then I'll get into the spoiler review. So no worries there, I'll chapter, timestamp it, I'll even scream it, give you a loud enough warning so you know when to get out. The spoiler review is going to start off with a brief overview of the things that I did like, the things I didn't like, talk about some things I noticed, give some context for the spoiler-free verdict. After that, I'm going to rehash the events of the movie through reviewing the Uta songs album that accompanied it. Then I want to talk about Uta herself. Not a full-blown character analysis, but how I thought her character served the movie, basically. From there, I'm freeballing. We'll talk about Volume 4 Billion, discuss some questions I still have about the movie, maybe even attempt to connect some things to the main story, who knows. With that being said, let's get into the spoiler-free review. This isn't a spoiler, but there is one part in the Japanese dub where the subtitles made it seem like there was a secret meaning to Shanks' name, but the English sub just kind of cleared that up for me because it was like just Luffy asking Uta why she calls Shanks instead of dad. Like, yeah, small stuff like that is what I found, interesting in the translation differences. I do not appreciate Fujitora's voice in the dub, or Akainu's for that matter. Like, Fujitora had enough time on screen to kind of make me become indifferent to his voice, but Akainu is just not hitting for me in English at all. Beppo's also kind of different for me in both versions. Like, I didn't have a problem with him in English, but I know I enjoyed him way more in Japanese. Sunny is cute as fuck in both though. It's been a very long time since I've heard Colin Klinkenberg as Luffy, and it was very refreshing actually. Luffy sounds cooler in the Japanese, but goofier in the English, so they both have their strengths. I think it's just up to preference, and I prefer the dub for this movie, but I probably prefer the sub for something like Wano. The plot was well woven into the themes of the movie, like even the main villain works well and feels threatening enough, I really enjoyed how Uta's character played along with the cast, especially the crew. I was mainly focused on her scenes alone or like as the idol Uta, and she still delivered on that part. She delivered on every front. Both versions of Uta, English or Japanese, are great. They did equally as great of a job conveying her emotions throughout the whole movie. The crew also feels well utilized throughout the movie, like everyone gets a moment, though, some of the group combo attacks I could live without. Like, I still enjoy everyone getting their shine, getting their moves in, but when there's 10 people on the crew and each of them have to, get their zoom in, their move, and then call out their move, it gets a little bit tiring. It's like one of the only two parts of the movie where I felt, okay, this feels a little slow. The second slow part, unfortunately, came during the climax. I won't spoil it here, I'll spoil it in a bit. But yeah, there's just specifically one part in the climax where I was just like, did we need to do this? No? Probably not. Otherwise, the movie didn't really feel like it was 2 hours. It seemed to flow very well, which is great considering that this is a musical, which I have a little less patience for. I think the worst part about this movie, hands down, was that these movie theaters were not sold out either times that I went. Other than that, pretty solid One Piece movie. I know I just said the Straw Hat crew specifically was utilized very well, but honestly, every single character in this movie had some point in time where they got the shine. As for the verdict, 10 out of 10 movie, has good replay value for me, looks beautiful, sounds beautiful, and messes my head up at the end. This movie has great replay value. I'd see it a third time if I could. It looks great. The soundtrack, even some of the score was slaptastic. It was surprising to me. That was the most surprising part to me. But it just didn't mess my head up. So for that reason only,
I'm out.
Like, it got my head racing as someone who's caught up with the manga because like the message and the themes that surround it are just great if you're a diehard fan of One Piece. But if you're just a casual or you don't know the story too well, then when you take this as like its self-contained package, the message is just nice, which isn't bad. So as a One Piece reviewer, I would give this movie a 9 out of 10, but as trying to be objective and just as a movie as itself, it's an 8. I think it's a strong recommend whether or not you are a One Piece fan or just into anime. I can't say this is the anime movie I'd recommend to non-anime people though, and I know that's not really fair because that's not what the movie's trying to be, but still, I gotta be transparent here. I kind of take that into consideration. It's time for the spoiler review. Hats off. It's time for the spoiler review. If you are here, if you are not caught up to the manga, if you have not seen the movie yet, you can leave. You should leave probably right now. This movie follows the dethroned king format, similar to Skypiea, Dressrosa, and Alabasta, except Gordon is the dethroned king, and Uta is the usurper. When Gordon gets praise from Usopp and then Sanji about how great of a parent he was or a parental figure, or how well he raised Uta, that's just one of those moments that's just, 1, it's great writing to me, 2, gives it a 9 out of 10 for me as a reviewer, and 3, just kind of just is one of those things that's like, okay, this is what I mean when I say every character was utilized very well. I found it cool that this movie lets you know that Uta and Luffy began their journey at the same time about 2 years ago. That way Luffy's way too busy making his way through the Grand Line to ever notice Uta or hear about her. Like if she starts any sooner, then Luffy should hear about her, right? She lived on the same island as him, so the second that newspaper comes in and goes, new singer Uta, everyone goes, yo Luffy, look, you know, so it's one of those small details that I'm glad that they threw in for us. Shanks' crew is a little more flashed out in this movie, like Hongo got some screen time, and Gob almost got a whole move-in. I didn't know either of those two characters before this movie. We got some more info on Shanks' whole crew in Volume 4 Billion, but I'll get to that in a bit. Though I will tell you right now, I was mainly interested in the Shanks section of that. But yeah, I'll say, once again, the movie portrayed the crew very well in my opinion. Whenever we do meet the crew, if the first member is someone like Hongo, or someone like Gab, or even someone like Rockstar, I'll be like excited to see how they interact with the crew now, instead of being like, ah, damn it, we're waiting for Luffy to meet Shanks again. It'll be like, no. If Rockstar comes through, if anyone who's like not Lucky Roo, Shanks, or what's his name, Ben Beckman come through, or even Yasop, like if it's not one of those four, and we can get like anyone else in the crew that's gonna like meet Luffy in the crew first to like test him out, then now I'll be more excited because like I get detailed drawings of these people now. Like I can feel the crew. I can feel like their presence now. So if either one of them pops up, I'm gonna recognize them one, and then I'll also be like, okay, cool. Let's see how the crew ranks, you know, next to these guys. I will admit though, part of me was watching this movie when the Yasop and Usopp connection hit, and I was like, damn, son, like, is this gonna be the moment that we get between Usopp and his dad? Like, we're not gonna get it in the main story. This is just our way of, like, you know, Oda's way of being like, all right, cool, they interacted, and hope you guys are happy. I will take the time now to say that Shanks' voice is a little bit better in the dub. Not overall, maybe, but for a specific instance, and that's just when he uses his Haki Blast to, like, deter Kizaru and Fujitoro away. Because in the English dub, it sounds like he's really emotional. He's about to crack. Like, if he, you know, is tested any further, he could potentially go out of control and like glass the whole island. Whereas in the Japanese, it's just like, it's an epic moment. It's like one of those, like, you know, the different type of emotion. Like, he sounds badass still, but he doesn't sound emotional. And so I think I just appreciated that a little bit more in the dub. And as for the part that I was talking about before that I disliked in the climax, it's this like flashback PowerPoint when Luffy and Shanks' attacks are like about to, you know, take effect, when they both attack at the same time, but like not when Nika pops out. It's just before that. It's like literally like a slideshow of, you know, some memories that Shanks is having of Uta, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't really care for this right now. This is making it feel very slow. You know, it didn't feel like it was 2 hours long, except for this part. I was like, all right, what's going on here? Luffy in both forms, just Luffy as a character, the way that he's dealt with in this movie is just really great. He's still goofy, and he's still not a bad enough pirate that he's gonna cheat to win. So like you see, like, you know, the game of chicken with Uta, he's just like, he's so confused that she would even cheat, even though like he's been doing this pirate thing for 2 years, you know. That doesn't mean that he's not wise, right? He still shows his wisdom here, like, you know, when Uta starts talking about, hey, you should probably quit becoming Pirate King. And, you know, he doesn't say anything. He just turns away, and he's like masking it by going like, I'm just gonna go take a nap on the sunny. Like, that's his way of being like, things are getting weird, I'm cutting out, without having to say it, you know. And then you got his manly tears at the end when he realizes that Uta's a goner and this is like his last conversation with her, which is like heartbreaking. And then it hits even harder when he wakes up and he sees, you know, Shanks' ship in the distance, and he sees, you know, her coffin with her jacket on top. It was really well done, actually. My only question at that point was, who set the sunny in sail? Like, who was that? Sunny itself, or was that Shanks' crew? Like, who put their ships out? I also just really enjoyed the post-credit scene that we had with Sunny. Luffy just like trying to get Sunny to talk again, considering, you know, we know that the Going Merry, you know, was also a spirit that, you know, spoke to them before it died. So Luffy's just trying to squeeze that conversation out, and he doesn't, and then he's just like, oh. And then he ends it with his signature phrase of like, you know, I'm gonna become the Pirate King, which is like the perfect way to end it. Like, that's like One Piece's trademark at this point, right? Like a verbal trademark, which is pretty cool. I do have some like slight nitpicks about the movie in general though, like really small insignificant shit. There's the part where Bartolomeo and Luffy fall, like, you know, right before they interact with the Sunny, they fall from the hill, and Bartolomeo's barrier just disappears. I was like, wait, did they just shrink into nothing? Like, why didn't they just, like, what happened there? Why did that not just, like, get animated? There's also that part, like I mentioned before, you know, Luffy and Shanks connecting, and then we get that PowerPoint flashback. But it's saved because, you know, we get to see Nika, so I'm forgiving that. I do wonder if Shanks could feel Nika's presence though. He'd be like, wait, is this Luffy? Who is this right here? And then there's just the simple fact that the ancient scripture version of Top Musica looks a lot more badass than the thing that spawns in, which I'm like, what is this guy? Okay, as part of the spoiler review, I feel like it's necessary to go over the Uta Songs album and how each song on that album plays along with the movie. So look, you get a whole album review for free. Coming into this, I did not like Ato's voice based off of what we heard from like the new Genesis intro that we got in the episodes, and then like the snippet of Bink Sake. I was just like not pleased with it at all. I was like, I don't know why she's giving me 6 different voices, like voice inflections. Like, what am I doing? What am I supposed to do with this sound right here? Am I supposed to like it? It just felt really awkward. But I was wrong. The album did a better version at showing off her versatility, so I was thankful for that. Like, I really thought coming into this movie, the worst part of this movie was going to be her voice, which is very scary considering that it's a musical and she's the main character. Speaking of which, this didn't really feel like a musical. There's like 6 minutes total of music in this, not considering the score. And this is a 2-hour movie, so like a lot of it is just One Piece action. On top of that, whenever the songs do come in, they have purpose. You know, they don't feel like they're, you know, shoehorned in. It feels like they're implemented smoothly. Like most musical setups feel contrived. Like, oh shit, here comes the next song. It's like whenever Uta pops in, I'm like, oh, we get a song. Cool, that's awesome. Like, I get it, in musicals, the music is what carries the plot forward, but you know, it doesn't really feel good unless you're Disney. So, starting off the album review, we have New Genesis, which was the perfect opening song, I believe. This song might slowly creep from my third to my second favorite song on the album. It really sets the stage for the musical element of the movie. It also cements Uta as the pop idol in the One Piece verse. Like, you can feel she's the shit. Not to mention the dance sequence that goes along with this song, and even the rest of the songs just made me feel like I was at a Hatsune Miku concert. Like, I felt like I was either playing DDR or like playing some type of rhythm game. It was just super addictive. Invincible is a great setup for Uta's intro and showing her true strength. And for that fact alone, it has great replay value. It's also the most One Piece opening sounding song on this album. Like, I felt like I was listening to Uta's version of We Are. And I think that's intentional because you can hear similar arrangements in both. I'd rank this 5th, probably. Backlight. Backlight is the song. It's the song that made me realize I was very wrong about her voice, because I was like, wait, what is this? Why does this go so hard right now? Like, I was laughing hysterically next to my boy the first time I saw it, because I was like, what the hell is that? Like, why do we only get one verse and hook of that? Like, why can't that just play for like an hour straight? Needless to say, this has become my main bop off the album, ranked 1st. Not even close. Although that might be due to some Paramore nostalgia. After listening to it on Spotify a few times and going back to watch the dub, I've decided that it goes a lot harder in the theaters. And that's not just because the speakers are louder, because I do have pretty loud speakers for this room, but it's just, I don't know. You can see Uta's aggression in the visuals of it. You know, you can see her dance moves being the vehicle for her attacks, which makes things a little bit cooler. It's just a nice touch. It amplifies her aggression that we then learn about later. And then a lot of the sound effects that we get during the song are just perfectly timed, so it makes some of the instruments bang harder. Fleeting Lullaby is also a bop. It's ranked 4th for me. If Backlight shows Uta's aggressive threat to the island and Luffy, then this song shows the threat she poses for the rest of the world. Literally, too, since the song is playing when the Goro started talking about how her power takes effect through the live streams. It just really feels like an overworked pop idol on the verge of snapping, you know? Top Musica is currently my 2nd favorite song on the album, though like I said earlier, it might be taken over by New Genesis soon. Although mainly that's because I already have an anime song that scratches the same itch. It gives me AOT rumbling vibes, which, you know, is funny because Hiroyuki Sawano is credited on this song. I know he didn't write the rumbling, but you know, just that Attack on Titan feel is what I'm talking about. But it totally should feel like that, because this is the song that almost ended the world. This is almost the score to the end of the world. If Lullaby was Uta taking her hostages and threatening to blow up the world, then this song was the walls coming down. I was already appreciative that I can enjoy the songs outside of this movie, but once it became apparent that Uta was the main villain, I was like, no. It's super important that her boss music slaps. Top Musica's lyrics, I guess like the chorus, are still a bit of a mystery to me, but luckily Reddit has already tried to transcribe this, so I have something to go off of. Based on the rune definitions that Reddit user StormyDaz pulled, coupled with the activation conditions of Top Musica, I'm just gonna take a slight stab in the dark here and say that they roughly translate to like, hail this gift of God that you have locked away, or something like that. Where the Wind Blows is the last song that Uta sings before, spoiler, she dies. I didn't get too much for it the first time, partially because she falls asleep and it cuts off. But by the time I heard the acapella, I was feeling it. Well, maybe not as a bop, but I was feeling the feels. That being said, it ranks number 6. The World's Continuation, though. The end credits song, I think, right? Which is another great choice. Cute. but just not my cup of tea, mainly because it's a slow jam. It does, however, work well as Uta's send-off song. Like, again, it's effective, it's just not gonna get put in my rotation. This rendition of Misc is still trash though. I don't want to hear it, numbers don't lie, moving on. Let's talk about Uta as a character though, or I guess as a meaning. I wondered what Uta meant because the word came up in a couple of songs, and then my lady told me that Uta actually means song, so this entire video is being credited to her based off that fact alone. Aside from just the voice acting, Uta actually has some great moments herself. I forget exactly how it's phrased, but at some point she says something like, death isn't a big deal, the soul is way more important than the body. She says this while holding a straw hat that exists in both planes of existence. I'm kidding. I just thought it was a quote that was very reminiscent to Luffy, in Gear 5 talking to Kaido saying like, when you die, all that's left are bones, so, what do I care? Considering this quote, the fact that she needs to heal people while in her music world could mean that, if they die in her world, then that's the death of their souls. Side note, the little girl who's dressed to look like Uta, even with like the split hair and like holding her teddy bear or whatever, absolutely adorable. One of those small yet effective details. Just like Shanks, Zoro, and Luffy, Uta has something going on with the left side of her, which I found pretty cool. I guess that just confirms to me that Joy Boy, or whoever we see by the end of the series with an eye patch, will have it on their left eye. All right, can we talk about Uta being overpowered as fuck real quick? Like, I understand why she had to die now. I know that some of the similarities between her powers and other anime powers are pretty obvious, but just for shits and giggles, let's go over them. We got Infinite Tsukiyomi to create this whole dream world business. We have Edo Tensei to control those people in that dream world and make them fight for her. We have Kyokasoi Getsu, the perfect hypnosis transition into that world. We have domain expansion / like 10 tails for top musica, I guess. That 10 tails beast summoning is what I would call that. And then to top it all off with the fact that Uta with top musica is basically the Scarlet Witch with the Darkhold. She's got a lot going on. Uta is so strong that she doesn't even need Conqueror's Haki to command people. She proves the overwhelming power of music and some 808s. Hell, even Charlos is able to command people in Uta's world. Although I think that's, having to do with his celestial dragon blood maybe, or, it could just be through sheer fear. I assume she has an awakened devil fruit because she's able to affect the whole world, but devil fruits are weird, especially when their main effect already affects like the world around them, so, I'm just gonna create my own headcanon here and say that her awakening is being able to summon top musica. And that's only because you can't summon it unless like certain emotional conditions are met. I did also consider the Wake Shrooms awakening her devil fruit, but that would mean I'd also have to consider Blackbeard using them in the real world or in the main story, to stay awake permanently. And, I don't know. I much prefer the Wake Shroom to be this metaphor for, how idols are overworked to the point where they turn to substances to maintain their image and it actually destroys them. Something like that. To keep it simple though, let's just say that the Wake Shroom is a poisonous shroom that Sanji just knows about because he's a great cook, and be done with it. Well, I guess Blackbeard using them would make sense if the reason that he can use them endlessly, or the reason that he can eat 2 devil fruits, is because he's already dead. Well, since we're already here. Uta being able to make food out of nowhere reminded me of the food we just saw in Egghead. I know, not completely the same, but I mean, these SSG snails did pop up out of nowhere on her island, and it's technically on the way to Egghead, and this was 12 years ago. All right, full rabbit hole time at this point. Can this movie be canon? That's my question of the day. I'm gonna say, yeah, it could be. Whether it is, we'll probably have to wait till the end of the story though, because there's only one thing standing in the way of this being canon to me, and that's Big Mom's appearance. First off, the timeline. The only way that this movie works is if it's post-Wano, like minutes, hours even, but there are some notable things to work against it here. Bartolomeo and Kobe being 1 and 2. Kobe should be missing right now, right? Because to our knowledge, he's with Blackbeard, except he's not. We saw Pudding in Blackbeard's ship. We didn't see Kobe, so maybe he's missing because he's in hiding. Quick side to the side note, I do appreciate that Kobe gets his praise from the audience for the Rocky Port incident. Next is Bartolomeo, which I guess by extension means Shanks as well. It makes perfect sense for Shanks to be nearby. Why wouldn't he be able to show up for his daughter's concert? But Bartolomeo is apparently in Shanks' territory, right? Like, that's the whole reason that Shanks had to dip from Wano territory, is because, hey, this dude's in our territory, he put his flag up. Well, not necessarily. We know that Bartolomeo put his flag up, but we don't know if he's still there. So you could easily just have, caused havoc real quick, pull the dipset. Katakuri being here is fine with me because we know that the Germa cover encounter wasn't, present day. We gotta address the elephant in the room, or the mom in the room. The only real issue, like I said, is Big Mom. It's a little fishy that her wardrobe is a little bit different. Like, why is Napoleon blue now? It's like you picked her in a fighting game for a mirror match and your friend already chose her original costume, so now you have to pick her in blue. The fact that she's alive here might just be a spoiler for the reveal later on in the main story, or it could be like a counterpoint for later on when we find out that she's actually dead. Although for the former, that that could also kind of work against it, because if we get a flashback later on detailing what Big Mom did after the volcano thing, then it would mean that, you know, definitely concrete evidence this movie cannot take place. But just to lay out the rest of the cope here, let's see 4 ways that I think this movie can be recognized as canon by the end of the story. Number 1, Uta's Farland blood being mentioned, although I guess that depends on how. Number 2, her coffin appears at the end, you know, of the story when we're getting like a world peace overview, and you know, someone somewhere, like we see Ace's grave, and then we see Whitebeard's grave, and then we see Uta's grave. This is a minor detail that I was like, this is really fishy that this is being even shown right now, but Luffy's ribbon on his straw hat is ripped in his last scene with Uta when, you know, he's like trying not to show he's crying and whatnot. So that could like easily come back later on, right? Like if we see a rip in Luffy's hat, people are gonna go crazy. And then obviously number 4 is Luffy could just hint at her power himself. Like whenever we reach Laugh Tale and they're like explaining the ancient history and the power of the voice, he could just like, all he needs to do is be like, I know someone like that. Here's where I think that last one is actually kind of possible. Among the many reasons why Uta's already overpowered, we do see her do something special in this movie. And that's when she shows that she's able to use her power underwater. Like she's even able to make notes out of water. And I know this is her magical world, so isn't that water fake? No, not at all. It actually affects Luffy, and shut up, don't think about it. Uta's fruit, I'm assuming, is also a version of the voice of all things. Like she's able to reach the world with her sound. People ask her for guidance and stuff like that, and she's probably able to speak for the world with her voice at the same time. Similar to Luffy's voice being heard underwater, or like the voice of all things being able to connect you to the Sea Kings. I think it's likely that Oda's kind of throwing us a hint here. So even if it's not canon or like official, this is like our Laugh Tale versus Raft Tale thing, you know? That'll be like 2 things if, you know, we confirm that Blackbeard's already dead later on. I don't know. I just felt like it was really intentional that Luffy's shirt has a microphone on it. Onward to One Piece 4 Billion, where we learn that Shanks is called the murderer of color of observation hockey because he prevents foes from using future sight, not because he can kill you with observation hockey like I initially thought. Either way, that's ridiculous. I like the fact that the God Valley origin was confirmed, which is one of those things that was highly speculated by people, but you know, now it's a fact. So this volume confirming this is how he got his 1 billion berry bounty was perfect because, you know, cool. We don't really need to see the rest of the journey. It would be stupid to be like, this is what got him to 4 billion, but it's nice to see his starting point. That flame sword shit though, why did we have to know that? Why did you not just save that for later in the manga? I would have been happy to wait for that. I guess since we're already here, I'll say it's cool that, you know, his flame connects to Luffy's fist and also to Sanji's feet. While we're on the topic of fire, let's just go over some things real quick that I found really neat. Luffy looking like Roger in the execution scene was fire. Luffy getting knocked out looking almost exactly like he did right before going Gear 5 versus Kaido was fire. Ben Beckman holding Kizaru hostage as a callback to Marineford was fire. Luffy saying, of course I will, as a callback to when he was starting to help out Nami. That was fire. Shanks talking about how Uta shouldn't be punished for her gift as a callback to Eni's lobby, and the whole speech about how, you know, ships aren't actually necessarily bad things, whatever the hell the speech was. That was fire. Zoro crossing the 6 paths. What the hell was that? Vegapunk's 6 faces. What the hell is that? Between that and everyone using observation hockey to see through each other's eyes, as if like I don't know why I didn't lose it at that part in the theaters. That was just fire anyway. All right, I'm okay. Cool. Let me tone it down. I appreciated that this flooded world that Uta sits in before her final battle with Luffy is looking like this purgatory world from Kingdom Hearts 3, which is pretty funny because the reason why Sora is even in that world in Kingdom Hearts is because he got there through the power of waking. And finally, some potential plot holes, questions, miscellaneous things to consider. In other words, things I noted in this movie that I couldn't fit anywhere else. Starting with the elephant in the room, which was how was Shanks able to stop Top Musica before? Why is Cypherpole aware of Sword? And why is it so nonchalant for these two to exist as 2 different departments, even though they should be working against each other? Basically, what could the dynamic of Cypherpole and Sword's relationship mean for the story going forward? Were the anti-Uta headsets made by Vegapunk? Yes, Kobe's observation is great, but we got to see that in the movie, and we got to see how tuned in he is, so I'm noting that for later. Apparently, though, it's not as good as Usopp's or Yasopp's yet. Wait, wasn't Blue Nose Fruit able to access both worlds? Let me not think about that too much. Either way, on the subject of hockey, I love how Shanks downplays Katakuri's hockey right before introducing Yasop. He's like, chill, you're not the only broken character in the series. And on the note of hockey feats transcending planes of existence, did you notice this? The Shanks hockey blast that we get towards the end of the movie is the same effect that's used in the trailer when you're showing Shanks' face. On top of that, the movie also does the same bait and switch as the promotional material. Like in the promo, we got a quote of Shanks saying, hey, the world doesn't really know peace, or like that thing doesn't exist in this world. So some people took that as a hint that we'd be seeing a darker side to Shanks in the movie, which we did, but that dark side was a false narrative. And that's hilarious because the story of Shanks destroying Elegia is a lie that Gordon told Uta to get her to watch the movie, to become a greater singer. Also, are the ancient machines that the crew fights in the library also automata? It's just funny because they're also standing next to ancient texts, which is exactly how Enel finds automata. Robin mentions how these machines were sort of given life through Top Musica, so I wonder if, that just means that we'll see something similar to that in Laugh Tale. Like, some machines that activate when a person worthy of the One Piece or when anyone steps on the island, basically. Or maybe, they're the same thing as, that machine that the crew found at the end of 1065. The Gorosei must have been watching this content on mute, right? They weren't. There was actually a point where they were trying to listen to the music. So maybe their haki is just strong enough that if they are aware of the power before they hear it, that they can tune it out. I don't know. Again, not going to think too hard about it. Their presence in this movie is just also very hyped after seeing them recently and frequently in the manga, because it's like, I don't know, it's just a good touch. Although probably not a good reputation for them because, hey, here's another world-ending person that you guys haven't cared about at all, and she's been using transponder snails that you probably should be able to have tracked. Even the release of this movie just meshes very well with current events in the manga. This is like similar to when Jujutsu Kaisen 0 came out in the US, and that was right when we started to get Uta back in the manga. This isn't surprising, but just a really cool tidbit of information, which is that Luffy can use Kong Gun while in Gear 5. I just wonder if Gear 5 came out because of Luffy's strong need to be free in that moment. And we made it. We made it to the end of this video. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. It is an hour and 15 minutes of recording. Fuck my life. I'd like to start this section out with a confession. I really enjoyed this movie, but I gotta get something off my chest. We needed more Yamato. My real confession is that One Piece Film Red was my first One Piece movie. I was gonna go through all of them before, but like as we drew closer to, the release date of this movie, I was just like, let me just not compare this to any other One Piece movie. Let me just have this be my first one. That's partially why I felt the need to watch it in sub and dub and then review it. Honestly, I regretted that decision when I looked at how long the script was and realized how much hell I would go through editing this video, but I don't anymore, so there's that. This was a great movie experience, and a great movie too. The crowd was hyped for all the moments, and it felt like the movie was highly appreciated even though few were in attendance. I didn't know what to expect coming into this movie, but I'd be lying to myself if I didn't say that I didn't expect some type of, reward for being baited out of a Shanks movie. Still, Film Red found some way, even without being, a Shanks-centered movie, to surpass any expectation that I had for a One Piece movie. I didn't know what a One Piece movie would look or even feel like, and most importantly, I didn't know what it would sound like, but it also surpassed my expectations on that level as well. I'm just very glad that I didn't watch any promotional material after the second trailer for this movie. I guess the first trailer, because the first thing I saw was like a preview tease, and then the second thing I saw was like the first trailer. I'm also glad that I didn't even know that this album existed back in August, because if I had listened to these songs beforehand, then I don't know, they wouldn't have hit as hard in the movie, I think. Backlight's still always gonna hit harder in the movie theaters, but it just wouldn't have been as shocking to me. Going in blind was the absolute best decision, but obviously it always is, right? But yeah, I stand by the verdict, an 8.5 out of 10. It's a 9 for the reviewer and me. It should be at least an 8 for everyone else, so I'm gonna put that number in between. I have spoken long enough and said what I needed to say on this topic, so with that being said, I hope you enjoy this review. I hope you enjoyed the movie, more importantly. So yeah, my name is Weekly Shonen. I will see you very soon. Yeah, have a great day. Be safe. Bye.